June 5th, 2020. It's been a long, sad, very painful week for the country. But we're left at the end of this week with one very puzzling question. Wendy's is the new Chick-fil-A? Hang on to your diapers, babies. I'm the barber. And this is the BetaFiles. Greetings from Greensboro, North Carolina. This week has shown us all two very dramatic contrasts in who we are as a culture and as a nation. At moments, it has shown us at our strongest as peaceful protesters exercise their right to denounce crimes against members of our own community. At other moments, the greed and willful disrespect of each other has been on display in the form of rioters who have hijacked those very protests for the simple goal of disrupting society and spreading mayhem for no other reason than selfish gain. Do not be fooled or distracted by the actions of a violent few who deserve nothing from us but rebuke and shame. The larger majority has a voice, and that voice cannot be lost no matter how long we have to chant, cry, or beg. We will be heard. I count myself fortunate that I came into my maturity during the 1990s. There was so much to see and hear during that decade that shaped a whole generation and taught us all how to live with each other. Those messages came from our media, our movies, our television shows. The most potent of those were the movies Boys in the Hood and Do the Right Thing. But when I see what has happened to us these past 2 weeks, I'm reminded of one of the most important television episodes that we don't really talk about anymore. It was an episode of The Fresh Prince. And in it, Carlton learns the reality of being black when he and Will are pulled over for mistakenly stealing a car. The most important part of the episode isn't Carlton's shock, but how Will knows what his role is in that moment and how he needs to act to keep from getting hurt. That episode aired in 1990, and as a teenager, it was the first time I saw this narrative. I'd never known it before. 30 years later, we are still asking the same questions. We are still dealing with the same atrocities and the same senseless violence against a single group of people just because they look different. I wanted to show you a couple of clips from two very different people. One was broadcast about an hour after Trump gave the now infamous Rose Garden address. The other was broadcast at noon on Tuesday, the day after. Both of these clips help illustrate the frustrations of our leadership in our time of our greatest needs.
When the mobs came, they abandoned us. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The nation went up in flames this weekend. No one in charge stood up to save America. Our leaders dithered, they cowered, they openly sided with the destroyers. In many cases, they egged them on. Later, they will deny doing any of this. They are denying it now. But you know the truth because you saw it happen. This is how nations collapse. When no one in authority keeps order, and when so many in our professional class encourage violence, American citizens are forced to defend themselves. They have no choice. No one else is going to defend them. They know that now. It's possible that more people will be hurt in coming days. That would be a tragedy. But in an environment like this, more violence could very well lead to a cascade of new tragedies, to something far bigger and more destructive than anything we have seen so far. So this isn't over. It might simply be the beginning. We pray it isn't. It's hard to think clearly about anything that's going on right now. The chaos, the destruction, the relentless lying from above, it's all too much. Americans are bewildered and they are afraid, but most of all, they are filled with rage, angrier than they have ever been. The worst people in our society have taken control. They did nothing to build this country. Now they are tearing it down. They are rushing us toward mass suicide. So how do we respond? We must protect ourselves and our families. Once again, we have no choice but to do that. But we cannot allow ourselves to become like they are. We are not animals. We are Americans. In the face of such indecency, we must resolve to be decent. We believe this country has a future. We intend for our children to live and thrive here. That is what we are defending. All our leaders do is set us against each other. They stage a never-ending national cockfight for their profit and amusement. But we're not going to play along. We will love our neighbors relentlessly in spite of all of it, not because they look like us or share our political views, but we love them because they are human beings and they are Americans. Those are the bonds that tie us together, the bonds our leaders seek to destroy. We can't let them.
I'm scared. I'm not going to lie. I'm scared. I'm scared for my family. I'm scared for my children. I'm scared for this country. I'm scared for the way that we are treating one another. Or how comfortable people are treating people with a lack of empathy and respect. We have lost the value of empathy. The concept of empathy and sympathy in this country in some parts is viewed as weak. And I say to people who say that, no, you are weak because you can't extend a hand. You are weak if you go out on the streets and say, I'm going to bust some skulls today because I feel angry, I feel repressed, even though you have basically, by the color of your skin, a leg up in this country. I say you are weak. And it pains me to have this sort of anger. I sat here in this chair in December, and I retweeted it over the weekend when my dad passed away. God rest his soul. Asking everybody to pull together, reach out, love. So damn tough about it. Looking at the color of somebody's skin and thinking they're less than. Who the hell are you? It's a human being we're talking about. That bleeds and loves and wants and desires just like everybody else. How tough is it to ask somebody, what's on your mind? How can I help? How can I be a part of the solution? And I'll be honest, it's awful tough to do that when the highest individual in our country is tear gassing people who are peaceably assembling just so he can stroll across the street, grab a Bible, and hold it upside down. And I know that pisses off a lot of people for me to say that, but I'm telling you what, it's difficult, but we've got to overcome it.
I really don't think I need to add anything to either of them. My only plea to each of you that happen to see this is twofold. There are always better ways to show support for our neighbors without destroying the property of other neighbors. Be careful with the national media right now. If you haven't had a chance to watch Short Files number 5 posted Monday night, please do it. In it, I break down the rhetorical strategies deployed by cable news channels to twist the stories to their political advantage. Be mindful of everything you see and hear, and be kind to one another. Thank you. Now, here's the Optic Poet.
Now it's time for Dr. J.
Okay, hold that. Hold that. Let me intro, and then you can go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know what I keep doing this thing with my hand.
You
Every time.
you having like a seizure or
I don't know. It's just like
a mini stroke?
it's like the first one I was doing this, I was like, it's time. And then this one I'm doing wah. So it is now time.
Just don't do this.
I know. It is time for the Optic Poet, Dr. J. How's it going?
Want to try that again?
No, we're keeping it script. All right, so today's topic is binge watching in COVID, and I know you just mentioned we'll come back to the MASH. You've been watching MASH. My wife has been binge watching My Big Fat Fabulous Life.
What?
And so yeah, it's like this reality TV show about this girl from Greensboro. And then, and she's also been binge watching To Die For because they released a new season. And then I have found a couple of channels on YouTube that I have just been engorging myself on. So, on top of really crazy alien UFO conspiracy documentaries.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been
Like
eating
History
that.
Channel documentaries?
No, not Ancient Aliens.
Oh, God.
No, these guys are well, okay, let me back up. These guys present themselves as legit. Because
No.
this isn't Ancient Aliens. This is deeper than you thought.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, one of the videos I watched the other day was a video on Area 51, and they go through like the whole history of Area 51 and the phenomena of Area 51, right? And what he concludes at the end of his documentary is that the conspiracy of Area 51 is that the government created this crazy conspiracy to keep us from really finding out what's happening out there. And what's really happening out there is they're building secret military style aircraft that they don't want anybody else to know about at Area 51, but they allow the conspiracy of the UFO stuff to just keep building and building and building. And he talked about this one guy where he had caught on, like he'd gone out and seen all these night flights of these secret aircraft, and he was writing to some of his people within the Air Force saying there's some really crazy stuff going on out there. And so the Air Force sent this dude out there with all these fake documents that were supposed to be classified and all that. And of course they were redacted in certain places and all this stuff, right? And all of it's just fake. He goes out there and he's just feeding him these narratives about, the dead aliens and Roswell was real and all this stuff, right? And the dude bought it. He ended up going crazy. And the guy from the Air Force who's feeding him all this stuff is like, I think we went a little too far.
Is it a mockumentary?
No, this is a real thing. It's a real documentary, and he's presenting it as, there's actually no real alien conspiracy in Area 51, that the government actually hyped that to cover up what they're really doing, which is some top secret aircraft.
That sounds believable.
Yeah. So, yeah.
More believable than aliens.
Yeah. But some of the alien stuff, I'm telling you, it's good.
What's
It's
this
like
called?
I said the other day, go look for it on YouTube. It's called Quentin Reviews Area 51. It's actually really good. But a lot of the stuff that I've been watching is just so fun. It's so good. Navajo Indians talking to aliens and stuff. It's so good. And I told you about the one where they tied Kennedy's assassination to aliens because they went a step further. I forgot to tell you about this. They talk about Marilyn Monroe and that they killed Marilyn Monroe because she was getting ready, like within a few days of her death, she was actually going to talk to this woman about alien stuff that the Kennedy brothers had told her about.
Because JFK is actually a reptile?
No.
Oh.
Kennedy had actually found out what they were doing.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Where do you find this crap?
dude, Amazon Prime and Netflix are just covered in it. It all started several weeks ago. This is how it got started. Several weeks ago, I was trying to find an old documentary about the pyramids, right? It was called The Pyramid Code, okay? And it's totally wacky too. I mean, I watch this stuff because it's fascinating to me to see other points of view and see how far they'll take it, right? And it's this actually, and I wanted to look at the Pyramid Code because I watched a Joe Rogan podcast where they had this guy on there where he was talking about lost ancient civilization, and he was tying in Göbekli Tepe. They were talking about the erosion, the rain erosion on the Sphinx and all that stuff. And so I was like, you know what? I haven't watched the Pyramid Code in a while. I need to go back and watch that. So I was trying to find that. And so I went on Netflix and typed in Pyramid Code. And Pyramid Code didn't come up. But like 50 movies about aliens did. And I was like, oh, honey pot.
I don't know that you're going to find your way out of the rabbit hole.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm so deep into the rabbit hole. The rabbits are like, wow, he's gone deep.
What I've watched isn't nearly as interesting as that.
See, when I binge watch something where it's like, okay, I'm going to get something out of this.
I mean, I don't have nothing like that. MASH has been, and the Tudors.
Okay.
Tudors, which is sensationalized, and it's, a lot of it's exaggerated, and the culture is good. They get the culture right, but MASH has been a show I've been obsessed with since I was small, because I was born in 75. MASH went off the air in 82.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it with my father, and then I got really obsessed with it in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Hulu. I could binge watch that. I don't know why that particular show right now. Maybe because they're stuck somewhere and can't leave either.
I was getting ready to say, okay, Jay, it's not that hard to draw the dots, to connect the 2 points here.
I suspect the next show I'll be binge watching is The West Wing. I keep coming back to the same few shows. Like, I don't watch a lot of new stuff because the old stuff speaks to me.
You know what Lauren and I have been watching a lot of? The Nanny.
Oh dear God. Her voice,
dude,
drives me nuts.
Once you get into like the 3rd episode, the voice just kind of goes into the background because it's actually I forgot how funny this show was.
Oh, it's funny. I've seen it.
It's hilarious.
That voice. Jesus almighty, that voice.
And we're making our way through Friends for like the 3rd time.
Yeah, there's some decent shows. The question is, why are we binging, and why are we binging what we're binging?
Yeah. Well, I told you why I'm binging I'm binging my stuff, because it truly does fascinate me to watch this stuff and to see all the alternatives out there. The thing about those, this is what I had to explain to my wife. The thing about those types of documentaries is that, hey Jacob, Mel.
From Guilford Tech.
What does it say? Because I may be getting the same thing.
Look, it's not pink.
Oh, it's turquoise because they want to surprise you. Surprise, you're fired. What is it?
It's a Subway gift card.
What?
HSS. Oh, thank you for your continued contributions and support. As a small token of our appreciation for your contributions, I have to save this.
Wow.
No, it's got to wait.
Okay. Mom told me to give it
Okay,
to you.
I'm doing a thing. Just put it on the counter. You won't believe what fast food my wife got.
What?
Take a guess.
Denny's.
Mrs. Winters.
Oh, I hate you. I haven't had Miss Winters since we left campus.
I haven't either.
We got a gift card from the division.
Well, I got a gift card from Division. I don't know about you. My assumption is you got one. NPR and BBC Radio both at different points over the past Did we say 56 days?
Yeah.
It's the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Both have said something rather similar. People feel like that they should accomplish a lot. They're setting goals for themselves for this lockdown, and they said you should probably stop doing that. It's okay if you don't accomplish a lot or anything.
Well, the thing is, the New York Times culture section was saying that like 2 weeks in. They were like, okay, so all that time you've got now and all the things you want to do, you're not doing them, are you?
Well, and NPR and BBC said it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
These are extreme times. It's probably hard for you to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. And if you look at Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and all these other platforms, you'll probably discover that they are making a ton of money, because that's what we're doing, is we're binge watching.
Yeah. Like
I said, I'm going to read every day for several hours. I'm only getting a couple hours of reading a day.
Yeah.
I thought I'd get like 4 or 5. I'm getting like 2 hours a day.
Well, like I said, I was going to write every day, and that worked for about 4 days, and now it's just kind of like, okay, I think I ought to write something today. So
I think we're too freaked out by everything to really want to do anything productive. I think binge watching gives you an escape. Yeah. It allows you to forget for a little while that what we're experiencing right now is going to last a little bit longer. You know, this lockdown in its current form is going to go on for another 4 or 5 weeks. Well, and what's interesting was the email I got from my other institution of employment this morning, where from the chancellor. And he said, you know, if you probably have heard about Governor Cooper's order for phase 2, that we're going to go ahead with phase 2. And the very next sentence was, with limited capacity. So even they are like, and what they're doing is they're going to let operational employees come in, basically like the janitors and the landscaper. They're coming. Yeah. That's it. Like faculty are still at home. Well, I'm glad that things are opening up a little bit, because this hair has got to go, man. Yeah. I'm getting a haircut on Tuesday. I can't even tell you. Oh, wait till you see the opening of this week's BetaFiles. That's the first thing I talk about is, you know, strap your mask on and go get your hair did. Yeah. I think the binge watching is just a means of getting away from it all. Yeah. I suspect, and I actually have been writing every day, not much a day. Uh-huh. I worked on 2 poems yesterday. I haven't written today, but I jot lines down throughout the day. So that part's actually happened, but that's what I do over the summer anyway. But as far as lines a day. Well, look, man, I read a poet named Lisa Jarneau who had a daughter. Uh-huh. She gave birth to a daughter, and she, for a long time, could only manage about 3 words a day. 3 words. 3 words. That's what it was. It was 3 words. You were going to do 3 words. Mine was a line a day. A line a day. That's right. She did 3 words because she didn't have time to do anything except be a mom. Right. Then she published the book that those 3 words a day came from. So, but it took her years. So I'm not writing a poem a day, but I'm writing a poem every 6 or 7 days. Well, that's not bad. I'll take that. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go so you can go eat your lunch. Yes, indeed. All right. We'll do this again next week. As always, thank you, Dr. J, the Optic. Doc Ock now. The Optic Poet. The Optic Poet, Dr. J. Yes. All right, and I'll see you later. Take care. All right, you too. Bye-bye. Bye.
Now it's time for Dr. Dr. J.
The topic, climate change. Socialist Armageddon or evangelical ghost story? The answer, tonight on Now See This Here Now Then. Hello, I'm Richard Cranium. Tonight, we look at global reduced climate reuse warming recycle change, better known as the slow warming of our climate, thus changing weather patterns, migration patterns, and dating patterns on Tinder. But first, a word from our sponsor. Oxygen. It makes up a third of the water on our planet, so drink it up. Oxygen. Climate change. Something 97% of scientists and 67% of Texans believe is real. The basic idea behind climate change is that the climate is changing. Thus, you can see why a third of the people in Texas don't think it is happening. Beyond that, the implications debated over climate change range from melting of ice caps to loss of birds to a shift from cable to streaming. The question that scientists are often forced to grapple with is what is causing the supposed conspiratorial change in weather, which leads down a rabbit hole of questionable suspects and a la carte Roku channels. Observe Exhibit A.
Yet pulling out of this is a huge deal, and to understand why, it helps to keep in mind one key number, and it's 2 degrees Celsius. Now, it's a bit of a shorthand, but the concern is that if we fail to limit temperature rise to that number, things get very bad and potentially irreversible.
Scientists say we'll likely see longer droughts and more intense heat waves, which could cause big disruptions to the world's food supply.
If we don't start with rapid emissions reductions and substantial emissions reductions, that will pass a danger point beyond which the consequences for many people and countries on Earth will simply become unacceptable and eventually disastrous.
It's true, and we are not talking about a fictional apocalypse like the one in the movie 2012. We're talking about an actual global disaster like the movie 2012. And the serious danger may actually be more imminent than you think. One estimate says that to have a good chance of avoiding the 2-degree threshold, human emissions of CO2 should stay below this level in total. This is our so-called carbon budget, and by the end of last year, we were estimated to already be up to here. And if current emission trends continue, we would go above that critical line in about 20 years. And that is not a long time. 20 years ago, South Park was on TV, Foo Fighters were touring, and Paul Rudd looked like this. What I'm saying is, 20 years ago was basically now.
That man's accent is fake. The fact that a global initiative has been started doesn't actually mean there's a climate crisis. If you really look at the Paris Agreement and the Green New Deal, they threaten to take away trillions of dollars away from every local oil magnate that is already barely operating on slender margins of billions of dollars. I do believe there's a conspiracy theory there. The Green New Deal itself was as good as the non-recycled paper it was printed on, not because it was wrong, but because opponents to the deal quickly attacked it, even if the proponents repeatedly noted that the deal was presented to start a conversation. But like so many naive 15-year-olds on Facebook, climate change supporters and activists were exposed by extreme examples on the right that 33% of Texans can truly understand. And then there's the problem of recycling. Although local and state governments have put moderately successful programs in place, the problem with recycling is that we have gotten so far behind on recycling we are shipping the waste to be recycled overseas, where it is simply piling up. So when you reduce and reuse, you're also shipping and repiling. With clear facts pointing to obvious conclusions, it is very apparent that the scientific community is wrong. All 97% of those scientists who believe in this obvious hoax. Everyone knows that 150 plus years of man-made pollution does not cause climate change and lead to a runaway greenhouse effect. Just look at Venus. I'm sure our multiple degree toting scientist posers would have you believe that Venus was caused by 1957 Chevys and Aquanet hairspray, which is quite feasible due to the winds on Venus. The evidence of man critically speeding up an already natural occurrence is sorely not lacking. So why do scientists believe that it is the case? The counter-arguments to this avalanche of common sense, based on years of compiled evidence, prove the real idiocy of 97% of the world's scientists. Observe Exhibit B.
Well, you even see them with some of the Democratic candidates. They get asked questions that are supposed to seem crazy. Like, the straw thing, that's silly, right? And they go, well, climate change is an existential threat, and maybe we can't have straws. And everyone starts looking at them like, really, guys? This is where we're going? Stop eating red meat. These are things that are never going to catch on with the electorate. And it just goes to, climate change is a religious belief for people who think they're too smart for religion. That's really what it's turned into now. And you see all the different aspects. It lines up. They're asking for forgiveness? Do they really think that there's any world in which any of this makes any difference?
Yeah, no, they've got Catholic guilt and they're going to confession, but they just have forgotten about God, so they're worshiping the environment instead. I thought that for a long time, that actually environmentalism in so many places have replaced religion, and you see it with kids in school. One of my kids, their class said that their motto was treat myself well, treat my friends well, respect the environment. And I was like, that's love your neighbor as yourself and God above all things. It's the same thing. You just replace who's in there.
Was that real? You're sure? Right. The issue with arguing against climate change is lack of ability to find any evidence that refutes the argument. You're seriously telling me they put that on the air? That wasn't like a sketch from SNL? All right. The core claim from climate deniers is that climate change is a natural ecological occurrence as seen through hundreds of thousands of years of geological evidence. Evidence that they refuse to acknowledge when discussing evolution, ironically. And even though they are correct, at the same time in nature it happens over hundreds of thousands of years. They actually put that on the air. The standards at that network are so confusing. All right. What scientists have found in environmental studies that cover the last 200 years is that we, the human race, have accelerated the process of climate change. And yes, when we look at climate activists, they can come up with some extremely bad gaffes when trying to explain what we need to do. Reduce, reuse, and recycle is a wonderful mantra, but so is the bigger the better in Texas. The fact that climate change is happening and not stopping means that we need to, at some point, really find ways to actually slow it down to a natural pace, as it should be. The most confusing part of this is that it has become a black and white issue over whether it is or is not happening, or if we are or are not the cause. In reality, it is a black and white issue. But the issue at stake is, are we going to do anything about it, or are we going to continue to bicker over it? In the 1970s and 1980s, the climate crisis was referred to as global warming. The past decade, the term has been replaced quite intelligently with the term climate change. Why? Because during the early years of climate awareness, opponents to climate awareness were able to transform a term that spoke for itself into a boogeyman of UFO-sized proportions. Now that the term has been replaced, the attack is on the people who are desperately trying to create awareness about the crisis that still exists. But Richard, it was a crisis in the 1980s. Nothing has happened like they said it would. Well, the only people who would argue that were either not born by the 1980s or did so much cocaine during the 1980s that they still think Cosby sweaters are cool. Or they're from Texas. It reminds me of something my wife Vacant told me the other day when she said, "Richard, sometimes you make me want to snort cyanide. I live for every breath that comes from that woman's juicy mouth." The reality is that it is happening. Whether you're on the left or right, the climate is turning against us. All of us. We can actually change it. But making a basket out of a water hose isn't going to be enough. It's going to take large sweeping change that we are very capable of accomplishing if we want to. And that is the real question in all of this. How much do we really want to do? That is all for tonight. Next time, sitcoms, socialist laugh track, or evangelical pregnancy scare. Until then, I am Richard Cranium. Ta-ta. That's it for this week. If you like what you saw, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. Don't forget to check out our short files posted at random during the week. Text messages from the living room, which is posted every Wednesday morning on YouTube, thebetafiles.com, and on Instagram. And also just check out our website, thebetafiles.com, for all kinds of really cool content. And follow us. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram. We are at The Beta File. For Dr. J, I am the barber. Make it a great day, and always remember that if the sun comes up, there's opportunity. So take it. This has been The Beta Files.